You told me not to move, eh? A very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean-Pierre Murray Kline, or JP for short. I am a business and an environmental technologist. I'm also a serial entrepreneur and a published author, and lots of things. Just a point of clarification, my mother didn't know what a serial entrepreneur is, so I just want to clear that up. I don't start businesses while eating cereal. A serial entrepreneur or business and environmental technologist is somebody who studies humanity, technology, and business, and then tries to research and consult on how those different entities can work together, be more sustainable, more ethical. That's really the work I try to do, because the relationship between humanity, technology, and business really needs to be worked on. So that's what I do, and it's not my full-time job. I dabble in several online businesses. I started off in entertainment, and then I went into law, and then I went into hosting, and then went into web development. I've done many things. Half of them worked, half of them didn't work. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been fortunate enough to travel to about 50, 60 cities around the world, and I have consulted either directly or indirectly through my own businesses in about 300 types of sectors. So I've got a very broad, diverse macro overview on what's happening around the world when it comes to business and society. I don't really want to talk too much about myself. If you would like to find out more about me and the work I do, please visit my website, jeanpierremurraykline.co.za. You can just Google it and you'll find me all over the place. I'm also on the social medias, Facebook Business. I've got about 100,000 followers there. If you'd like to be one of those followers, you probably want to know what I look like from behind. Take a look. Alright, now you can follow me. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn and all those other bits and bobs. We're living in a world today where people like to talk more, listen less, and do nothing at all. Teens, please don't be shy to chirp up and have something to say if I ask questions or make a comment you'd like to say something on. So I believe we're living in that type of world at the moment, and radio is really, really important. Radio is, of course, one of the oldest and most civilized methods of communication in humanity's history. And it started off like many technologies in mankind's history, and it started off with war. Radio was first used in the Navy, the US Navy. I did an article and traveled to Rwanda. When I grew up, I watched a movie called Hotel Rwanda. Have any of you seen it?
Yeah.
I had to go visit Rwanda, and the article was about the smartest country in Africa. And my visit there was incredibly emotional, and anyone who knows anything about the genocide that took place there, and perhaps even visited Rwanda, will know that a radio station played a big part in the genocide there. Of course, radio has also been used for wonderful things. It's been used for education during lockdown, during COVID. It was one of the only ways we could educate people. It's been used for religion, it's been used for news, it's been used for something I know nothing about, which is sports, and it's been used for entertainment. It's gone through periods of censorship, but I'm sure you would agree that it's also helped promote freedom of speech. Radio's brought moments of calm, it's brought moments of peace. Once AM to FM technology was perfected, because that was a hurdle for the technology, radio really boomed. And today, there are over 45,000 traditional radio stations. Radio remains, especially in Africa and other remote locations, as the preferred, if not only, method of communication. But everything's changing now, which is why we are here today. And I'm referring to the shift from analog to digital radio. Digital audio broadcasting, or DAB, or if you're very lucky, you've got DAB Plus, Disney Plus. Was born in 1995. Side nugget is the next big transition with technology is probably going to be from organic to digital. But that we'll save for a talk for another day entirely. I believe radio may have had its heyday, and it's been a wonderful heyday. Radio's been around for almost 100 years. No technology or business or organization has really lasted 100 years, not in the state that it was conceived. The uptake of radio has never really been challenged either. The only technology which I think came close to the uptake and penetration of radio would have been the internet, and that still took 2 or 3 decades to reach similar penetration. Digital radio in all its varieties, and there are many, many varieties, I bulk and call e-radio. Now, there are e-radio stations all over the world, China, Russia, Eurasia, Africa, anyone basically with an internet connection now can broadcast on an e-radio. There is a boy called Hasim Hamid who was incredibly young when he broadcasted his first radio show in the evening. Anyone want to take a guess how old Hasim was? He was from Pakistan. 4 years old, and there's a big difference between the youngest and the oldest, 90 years actually. Walter Bingham from Jerusalem was 94. Wow. There's no definitive data on how many e-radio stations there are, but there's wide consensus on which the most popular are. In my research, I found about 50. And in the top 10, sharing the top 10 with music radio stations is a Christian radio station. I'm sure you've heard of K-Love.
Yes, yes.
Now, K-Love's doing very, very well, and its fanbook page has got 45,000 followers on Facebook. Their Facebook page for their actual radio station is sitting on 2.5 million followers, and that's very impressive considering how long they've been around. In South Africa, 77% of us listen to radio through traditional receivers, 29% listen to it via our phones, 12% via TV sets with satellite connections, and only 1% on computers. But if you want to work out how many people are listening to e-radio, you need to add the cell phones, the computers, and satellites all together. So it's basically a third of our population is listening to e-radios. The biggest radio station we have in South Africa, I'm sure you've never heard of, it is called Ukolozi FM. Our South Africans, Yuri, have you heard of this? Excellent. And they've got about 7.5 million members or listeners, and the biggest radio station in the world at the moment is BBC World Services with 20 million listeners. Very, very impressive stuff. Once the cost of data, because data in South Africa and elsewhere in the world is extremely expensive, once that's dropped, and I believe once we've got stable internet connections, which is a problem here in Africa, once we've got stable electricity as well, because you do need electricity for internet, also a problem here in South Africa, I think the transition back home for me, digital radio is going to blossom. These electricity and internet problems are hindered by some commercial interests, but also some government interests. Fortunately, I believe that with the likes of our new battery innovations and home and office powered solutions, we should resolve our electricity crisis. And with the likes of Google and Starlink's satellite systems, I think that we won't need to wait for governments and commercial entities before the uptake of digital radio booms in South Africa. I think we're going to have that happen successfully in between 10 and 20 years, and depending on which country you chat to me about, I've got different years. A lot of South Africans may say to me that that's incredibly unlikely, and my response to them would be that any country without legacy infrastructure can often uptake new technologies quicker. And I can use Africa and I can use the Middle East as a very good example of that, because they were the leaders when it came to satellite radio. Africa as a continent is one of the most established and future-thinking and future leaders when it comes to digital currencies. So I've got a lot of hope for Africa and in South Africa, and I do think that we are going to see digital radio blossom very soon. For radio, in the next 2 decades, I'm speaking broadly about radio, I think we, and organizations such as yourself, and radio stations in general, directly after this, I'm going to go meet Media24, which is a very popular broadcasting organization here. You need to focus on a hybrid of traditional radio and e-radio. And around the year 2040, you need to be 100% prepared to be a digital radio station. I wanted to do some research on your organization, so I went to Google and I went to 2 websites. FeberRadio.co.za, which I believe is the local South African website, and then there's febc.org, which must be one of the international websites. I found many of them. Here are my observations and what I found online. The largest online footprint is 35,000 followers. There are about 4 posts a week, and the rough engagement is 475 per post. The local version, co.za, only has 10,000 followers. These aren't really significant numbers if you're to judge social media footprint as an engagement on popularity. And I think that there is a lot of scope for your organization to grow online. So how do we go E? How do we become an e-radio station? Is it a significant challenge for your organization? I want to get the temperature in the room. Is it?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. Some yes, some no, some are abstaining from.
And just to make sure that this is not a radio station, and neither of those are. We have a bunch of e-radio stations that are looking very different from what you described, but these are just promotion.
So Google showed a number of websites which are related to that organization. I only had a week to do some research.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to clarify. So
Yes, there's lots and lots and lots, all over the internet. I tried to do a local one and then an international one. I definitely don't want to get into trouble, so I do understand. All right, so you know, how do we go? E, is it going to be a challenge for your organization? And that's probably a question I pondered on the most. And at the end of the day, I don't believe it is going to be a challenge for your organization no more than any other radio station. I think the playing fields are pretty level. Your organization started off almost 100 years ago. It's about 80 years old. It's almost as old as radio itself. Almost as old. Almost 100 years old. So you're approaching your 100-year mark. I do think it's right that you ask yourself how you're going to fit in the social fabric in the coming years. I think that's very important because no organization lasts the way it's been conceived for 100 years. None of the top 500s, none of them. So it's really, really important that you do ask that question, but I do think that there's lots of hope. There's something I found on a website, and I thought it was an excellent line. I'm going to quote it now. You must be thirsty and hungry before you are satisfied. And I believe these kind of events today, like you've invited Chantal and myself to, show that your organization is very hungry to see how you can fit in the future. So that is fantastic. I also wanted to say with confidence that during my research, I found some tremendous records about your organization. You've got about 160 radio stations around the world, and you broadcast in about 50 countries and in 140 languages. Are those numbers more or less correct?
Yes.
That is a significant achievement, so well done. I don't think I've worked with even a corporate which has managed to have that kind of penetration around the world. I made a note here that I believe this could only have happened for 2 reasons. One, you were innovative, and the other reason is you were persistent. There was a story I read about your organization quite literally putting radios into suitcases, and then I imagined you were carrying it into communities, and that was allowing people to listen to your stations. I've heard about your organization setting up transmitters on islands off the coast of China, I think, you could broadcast in. that correct? The Philippines.
Yes.
That's some innovation for you and some persistence. I had a final note as an observation for your organization that I liked very much that you don't only stick to religious notes and religious messaging, you've also focused on social matters and also educational matters. And I ended off my notes in your organization with a thanks. I wanted to say, I'm deeply grateful for the tremendous amount of work you must have done and provided millions of people around the world since your inception. Absolutely remarkable, and at the time I've had to research your organization, it really did blow my mind. So from me, thank you very much for that work. Absolutely amazing. The reason I believe you've done so well, I think your key ingredient, your key recipe, is that you've kept things local. In South Africa, we've got a saying called local is lekker, and your content is lekker. Absolutely fantastic stuff. I think it's one of your greatest strengths, not only up to date, but it's also going to be one of your greatest strengths into the future. I think you've provided tremendous value, and you've got tremendous value to offer humanity, especially going forward. I couldn't think of a more pressing and urgent time to have an organization such as yourself. So any nuggets today I can share to keep you going, that'd be wonderful for me. That'll be a feather in my hat. So you've had the sugar, let me give you the salt. Unfortunately, everything that you've done to date has been built on a foundation. The youth and the future are no longer interested in. Let me say that again. Everything that you've done to date has been built on a foundation. The youth and the future are no longer interested in. Radio is of very little interest to youngsters. There are teenagers that I will speak to and they won't know what a radio station was. That's my experience here in South Africa. I'm not sure what it's like elsewhere in the world, but radio is just not something that youth are interested in. The relevance of religion and other influential forces have also never been questioned like they are today. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to be in a time where we question. We don't question, we don't change. So that's not a red flag for me. I believe religion plays a very influential role in the trajectory of society. As a business person, I'm studying 3 or 4 different religions because I know it influences 4 billion people around the world. It's a pivotal part of our social fabric. Setting this all aside, I do think you need to focus on your biggest risks. And there are so many risks. I've selected just 2 today. Risk number 1. The way you reach people today will not be around in the coming years. The 4 billion people you once accessed through radio will be dwindling from this day forward. That's risk number 1. Risk number 2. The people listening to your content are aging. Always have to be very careful when I talk about age. And let me pick on a market or a sector which I think explains the risk the most, and it's a market that you're in China. 1.2, 1.4 billion people, aging population. There's research which suggests that very soon China will be losing 300 million people to death, not because of a natural disaster, but because they're an aged population. 300 million people a year. That's something quite significant. This means that your organization is going to have to work out where the young fish are hanging out and hang out in those spots. And those spots are going to be digital spaces. How many of you have been onto the metaverse? No? No, that's fine. I'm not even on the metaverse. How about TikTok? You're on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. My mom's on TikTok. Try to avoid TikTok. I have no doubt that your organization has the desire to meet these challenges, and I think that they will. In many ways, I believe I'm preaching to the converted. But I do like to talk about the future, so I'm going to give you some pros and cons now with a bit of a disclaimer that depending on your attitude, even the worst con could be an opportunity. But before I tackle that, let me have a sip of water. If you feel like you may be missing any of my nuggets today, I will compose an article after this and share it with your organization. Let's start with a pro. Your organization's online reputation. Who's done a search on your organization's reputation recently? In the last month or so? Anyone? No? I did one, and I found some interesting nuggets on Google ratings, Glassdoor, on Facebook, on Twitter, on several blogs. There are not only listeners commenting about your organization online, but there are colleagues and staff members commenting online. And there was one common story from your colleagues being shared online. Anyone please take a guess what people are saying or what I found? There's no wrongs or rights here. What I found online, I'm not sure if you want this online, is people in your organization are commenting publicly on the remuneration you're offering one another. That is online, and I found it on 3 separate sources. I'm not sure if that's something that you want online. I'm not sure if that's something you were aware of, but it is online. But it's still a pro, because now you can engage and you can respond. You need a social media strategy, and it's something that I consult on and I write on, and it requires an entire workshop. But you need 3 legs to that chair, and the first leg is content, the second is marketing, and the third is engagement. Do we have anyone from your social media teams? Do we have a social media team? Not yet. You will in the future. Okay. Hopefully you'll have me back and we can do that.
Just to clarify, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have multiple. Each one of us represents.
But no one here today.
All of us have social media. Yeah.
Okay.
So we understand those people are not here, but we do have those.
Sorry, I just want to get your name. Victor, I'm
not going to interrupt.
Special paragraph. No, I'd love that you do. Please, everyone interrupt me. I'm going to name one of my paragraphs in my article. Victor's questions. Let's move on to a con, digital censorship. Now, the freedom of electronic communications is something that I stand up for. The internet is a human right. It was declared by the United Nations, but it doesn't matter what people declare human rights are. It's all about what is implemented and how it's enforced. I believe your organization has done all sorts of magic mitigating relationships with organizations around the world and getting into countries. But in the future, you're going to have to be doing that online. No one company or one country controls the internet. But man, can they censor your stuff. It's a major risk. It's been happening to date, it's happening now, and I believe it's going to get worse in the future. And the reason I think it's getting worse isn't because of anything sinister. I just think that humans are maturing online. Electronic maturity, e-behavior, and we're just not there yet. We're learning how to behave online. For the time being, I want to recommend that online you diversify your channels and your access points, you advertise them widely, and then you play a pivotal part in educating people on how to access your channels if you do need to circumvent organizations or institutions which are trying to censor your content. Pro, positive, e-radio quality. We all know electronic radio, digital radio is significantly better to an analog signal. There are 3 items which digital radio or e-radio brings to the table that analog never had. One is visuals, the ability to broadcast visuals with your sound, shareability of your content, and engagement. Absolutely fantastic things. When thinking about your organization and this pro and the opportunities it posed, I had a choice to make. Either I told you to jump straight in and just go for it all and do it all, or perhaps take a slower approach or find a middle ground. And I believe that you need to find a middle ground. I think it could be detrimental to your listeners if you try and do everything too quickly and all at once. You've got teams who have been preparing your content for radio, got listeners who are quite used to consuming your radio in a certain way. It does require quite a big discussion, but I just wanted to give these reasons. The most important reasons are it aids in preparation of content and the consumption of content and maintaining your consistency. I think the window that you need to work on having a hybrid of your traditional and your digital, and digital for you for the next 3 years, obviously it needs to be your digital signals, but just basic supportive information. Now, if you use a digital radio receiver, it already provides you additional information, the presenter, perhaps time zones, other nuggets of information. And I think that is where you need to go for the next 3 years, and then after that, we need to take the next big step and bring in visuals and videos and all those sort of things, which I'm not sure your content team or listeners are yet ready for. 3 years isn't a long time. Hopefully you'll have some questions about that later. I hope so. Another pro, digital platforms and devices. All right, I love devices. I don't want to talk too much about them now. Apple users, Android users. I don't want to start that war. We all know the devices used for radio. You've got your cell phones, you've got your DAB devices, you've got online streaming and browsers, you've got apps, you've got special things like Amazon Kindle, Fire tablets, and obviously satellite. I want to focus on 2 specific platforms or 2 specific types of devices just for you. The first one is digital radio in your car, and I believe this is going to become mainstream in the next 3 to 5 years. And the reason I think that that's going to become mainstream is because the devices are costing less and less to manufacture. I think that this is going to speed up uptake of radio in a car, but there is a risk there. Because as soon as you start broadcasting to vehicles and to cars, you're perhaps catching somebody on their way to work, and you should be producing a morning show, but you're actually broadcasting from another spot, another time zone, and it's an evening show. Your content might not be applicable and consumable. So there's tricks which need to be addressed and ironed out quite quickly, and I think that that's your biggest challenge here, because if you get that wrong, people are not going to stream radio, they are going to download it. It's going to be on demand, and there's a certain magic which comes with live radio, which I think you will lose. So if you don't perfect or work on streaming content which is diversified and could work in multiple zones, I think we may lose live radio, be it analog or digital, and that would be very, very sad. Digital radio is going to be perfected first in China and Asia. They are the largest markets. They're also very innovative nations by culture, and that brings the end of my point for digital radio in cars. The next one is app development. Now, there is an app which I found on the App Store. Probably multiple, but the one that I found, it's got its business address in the Philippines, and it's been downloaded 10,000 times. It's got a 3-star rating and absolutely no reviews. Victor, are there any apps, other apps? What's the biggest app?
Sorry.
Your app? You're on your phone.
I'm actually
I lost it on his app. All right, so that's the one that I found the most, and it is in competition with a online radio station. The biggest one I found was TuneIn Radio, and their app has been downloaded 100 million times, and it's got a 4.8 star rating. So you have a lot of work to do there. I develop apps. I mean, I don't personally develop apps. I'm not a coder or a computer nerd of that sort, but I do consult on what apps should involve. And again, it's a whole other discussion, but I did want to give you some nuggets of what I think your app needs to include. The first bullet point is it needs to be of global standards, and not the standards of today. You need to think into the future. What is an app going to be in the next 2 to 3 years? That's a difficult thing to do, but it's also great fun to play around with that. Obviously, you need to have it downloadable. You've got your iStore, your Play Store, but there are also independent stores with good security ratings which you need to try and get your website on, especially when you're trying to focus on a specific area or region. Here's something you may not agree with or agree with. You need two versions of your app. You need a free version which allows adverts. Okay, no bad faces, all right. And then you need a paid version with a subscription. And the reason you need those two different apps is because apps cost an absolute fortune. I'll unpack that in just a few seconds. The most important feature of the app needs to be able to sort your content. The app has the ability to ensure your content remains localized. It really has to be a smart app. It needs to know what's on your databases, and it needs to know the user. It's got to do all the groundwork. You're not going to tell the app what to show. The app is going to know the user, and that requires some data analytics. And it's imperative that your app has that ability. Users need to decide what they're listening to, and their phone, the app, will give you that advantage. Needs to have sound, articles, be very, very good if it's got a playlist, perhaps some music, a news section, a community section, a store, and social media integration. All very, very important things. If I was quoting a business in South Africa to develop that app, it would be between 500 and 800,000 rand and take about a year and a half. And that's just the base costs. That doesn't involve your monthly maintenance, all the multiple servers you have to have around the world, because you're going to have content all over the world sitting on cloud technology, and all that the app does is plugs into that and says, hey, this is my listener, this is their criteria, what can I show them that I know that they want to consume or enjoy? Very clever app. Your website also needs to emulate the app. The main difference today between an app and a website is a website has got no offline capabilities, but in the future, I believe apps and websites are going to be very similar. They may even merge, but not everyone wants to download an app on their phone. So you do need to have a website which emulates that. Now you're going to need a team of very clever people, and I thought I'd paint a picture on what I think that boardroom table may look like. I was looking at all the people in the room, and I think that if I could see through their eyes and understand their skill sets, I know that I'll definitely find somebody who's very good at content, very good at app development. Not that they need to develop the app themselves, but they need to be able to control those people or the organizations which develop the app for you. Unfortunately, organizations and businesses often get, for lack of a better word, ripped off when it comes to the expenses on app development. And it's very helpful to have somebody in-house who knows how you can gauge that they are not being taken advantage of. Somebody who's very good at websites, somebody who's very good at marketing, social media. You need a data scientist. Very, very important. You need a really good data nerd. Somebody who's very good at security, very good at legal, somebody who's very good at communication because your team won't be in the same room. Somebody separate who's very good at collaboration, and I'm going to unpack that in just a moment. Somebody technical, and then a consistency manager. Somebody who's making sure that the content is consistent. Quick note on the websites I saw, I couldn't find any access to any large libraries. I don't think there were any major streaming options, and I don't think that the websites that I had a look at had any data analytics put into them. Your apps need to be guinea pigged on the following countries. I can explain why, perhaps, with a question later. The United Nations, sorry. I was at the United Nations earlier this year, the forefront of my mind. United States, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, and China. If you can get your apps to work and adapt in those very different cultures, then I think you're going to have a working recipe. But you must be patient with yourself, please, because it's quite difficult to pull off an app. And what you start off with in the first year will be nothing like the next 3 or 4 years down the line. Onto a con. It's harder to place adverts. Not that it's physically harder to program an app to display an advert, but people don't want to consume adverts. The youth today, if you put an advert on, they just switch to another radio station, and we don't want to do that. Now I'm going to name drop a few organizations here, some Goliaths, like Amazon and Facebook. They're very good at placing adverts. And one of the tricks to the trade, or my trade, on ways to be very innovative and successful was to watch others who are successful and try emulate and then better what they're doing. Social media platforms are excellent for studying, but they also pose the biggest risk to your organization. Facebook already has 4 billion users. They can quite quickly decide that they wish to host a Christian radio station. That I feel would be something that would scare my organization. Amazon did that when they started to the book market. They decided, I'm going to use technology and we're just going to take over. So that's a bit of a fear I have for your organization. Some other entities to keep an eye on is TuneIn Radio, Simple Radio, NPR One, LiveX Live, and iHeart Radio. Those are just a few to keep an eye on. I thoroughly enjoy watching my competitors and seeing what's working well with them. Another pro, an opportunity to get on board with the subscription economy. The subscription economy, the gig economy, the circular economy are the fastest growing economies in the world, and I think that your organization could use it to its advantage. By a show of hands, who's opposed to charging a subscription to the listeners? Just broadly. Opposed. Would like your organization's service to be free. It's for who would like it to be free?
Yeah, a lot of them.
It is something that you're going to have to work on, because I'm not sure how you finance an app. It's very, very expensive, costly things. And I think you're going to have to. Competitors are going to be doing it, other radio stations are going to be doing it. I think if it's done correctly, it could work quite nicely. But obviously it's in your hands. It's good to keep an eye on what subscription fees are. They vary drastically on radio stations, between $3 and $15 per month. 2 entities to keep a specific eye on are Spotify and Pandora, especially when it comes to subscription fees. But subscription economy is definitely a pro. Let's move on to some cons, and I've got a few listed under here. Data costs I've touched on. The next one is search engine algorithms. Not only can governments and corporates block your content, you now have to deal with annoying computer bots. I'm dealing with a campaign at the moment, and a PPC AdWords campaign, and Google is insisting that I apply for an event ticketing service where the advert and the website or the landing page has absolutely nothing to do with ticket sales or events of that nature. It's literally a little bit of code which is picking on content of a client of mine. And you need to know how to identify that and engage. It's really, really important. Loss of localism, I've got that down as a con because I do think it's one of the risks. I did mention I think your local's lekker content is one of your strengths, but as you use e-radio, and if it's not done correctly, it could be detrimental. E-attacks, data breaches, massive risks if you've got data being stored around the world. Royalties, jurisdictions, taxes, risks of infringements and copyrights, that would all be a major concern for me. Definitely need a team keeping an eye on those items. Pro, something that I was asked specifically to comment on for your organization, was electronic banking. Is anyone from Canada here? Do you know what year Canada started doing banking online? I heard a rumor that you were one of the slowest, which you were. It's very strange. Thank you for verifying that for me. I didn't believe it. So electronic banking, you're already processing some e-payments on your website. Blockchain is something to keep an eye on. I haven't yet workshopped on how blockchain could work on a radio station. I'd love to investigate that in the future. But I do want you to perhaps investigate receiving payments from digital currencies. Does anybody have Bitcoin? Any of you Bitcoin holders?
Just the boss out of it.
Just
the boss.
Do you
So two
understand?
people have Bitcoin, and I'm pretty certain that they've done nothing with it. It's literally just sat there. So we've got some people with digital currencies, and it's literally sitting in an electronic wallet. They don't know what to do with it. Digital currencies will be used. It's definitely going to affect all industries in the future. But right now, people are sitting with electronic money and they don't know what to do with it. And I just think it would be wonderful if they start donating it to your organization. So be one of the first e-radio stations to accept Bitcoin. Just download Luno and then convert it to your local currency. I just think, go ahead and see if it works. Either works or it doesn't. All right, I'm nearly at the end of my list of pros and cons. Okay. The social media footprint for your organization absolutely needs to be worked on, and I think that some immediate opportunities and free opportunities are the digital chat options. Travel to several cities in China. WeChat is used there. We've got WhatsApp everywhere else. There are free chatbots which you could be using quite easily on your social media, which could help with your engagement and pushing content. On the subject of pushing content, I think that one of the most important items of content you could be pushing at the moment, and these are also available online, but they could be pushed a bit more, are your testimonials. Your testimonials are fantastic. I think you need to find the mechanism and the tools online to push your testimonials. Does your organization have a social media policy with its suppliers and all your colleagues? It's something you want to investigate, because not only is it required by law for some labor regulations, but any member of your organization now has also got a digital footprint. The way people behave online can positively and negatively affect your organization, and setting some ground rules is pretty important.
So social media policy internal,
Internal, yes.
the way that we engage our audience.
The way that the team behaves online,
Nice.
that's very, very important.
So what you're really referring to is people's personal social footprint?
And it's a fine line,
That's
Yeah.
but it has to happen. I've seen online reputation destroy organizations.
okay.
And I think the fine line that you must not cross is privacy. I think that you need to respect people's privacy. But it's something that will evolve. But it's very important. I don't want to see your organization burnt because somebody does something silly online and somebody gets hold of it and spreads it everywhere. Privacy invasion, we don't want to do that either. Let's talk about how to make money for an electronic radio station. Now there's lots of ideas out there. These are the ones I think are most important for your organization. The first one is sponsored shows. Depending on the content, I know you can find an organization that's interested in that specific content and they can champion the costs for that. The donate feature, you've already got PayFast and SnapScan. That is just the tip of the iceberg for electronic payments. I think you need to have that readily available in every option, every currency available as soon as possible. It's so simple to do on a website. Crowdfunding particular events, something to focus on. And here's an idea I had, and I'd also like to see if you like this idea. And if you don't, that's fine. I won't take it personally. How about your organization through the app and through the website providing counseling as a paid service? How do people feel about that?
No.
So you're already dispensing lots of wonderful advice now, but there may be a corporate who would like to invite your organization in and happy to pay for a specialist. It's just an idea I had, and I think counseling is great, and I think that people are quite used to paying for a professional's time. And just private counseling could work quite nicely.
Your friend Victor is already doing it.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah.
Good. Well, what services?
Psychological counseling.
That's great. You see, there's already a demand, and there's already an e-behavior out there. People are used to paying for that.
Most of it is free, but there's a lot of people who
And what do you charge per session? I just wanted to get an idea.
it's in St. Petersburg, so it's in all different currencies.
How do you feel about merchandise? No? No. A lot of people feel it's very tacky.
Just, well, I think it's not the tactics, in the sense of our type of ministry. It's normally the issue between the internal revenue of each country and how they perceive non-profits making profit. I think sometimes that's where the push is. We do have a lot of possible merchandise, but sometimes you may lose your non-profit status if you engage in something.
So you understand a smart app and a smart website will only display adverts on merchandise for people who like to buy things. So you don't need to worry about that. Your content will be presented in such a way that the app already knows the person's going to like it, and you can do that with merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
In every talk I do, there's normally one line which I know will probably get me into trouble. This is it. So I was having a discussion with a colleague of mine, and it was around copyright infringements and royalties. And the debate was about selling and printing the Bible. And printing and selling the Bible. Amazon can already do this. That's what it is. And what I found humorous was the concept that the creators of the content for the Bible would arrive and come back, which some have said they're going to do. So that's the line that was going to get me into trouble. But so they came back and they had to pay out royalties for the Bible. And obviously there are no royalties on the Bible. And I just thought it'd be really something special if you could offer a digital and perhaps a printed version for your organization specifically. But maybe that's not the route you want to go. The final one is membership. I work with 3 community projects at the moment. All of them have a membership base, and they all take a stipend from the membership. And the recipe for their success in memberships is that they have really focused on the members getting something really special, some sort of value added, something or other back from their membership. I think that could be something that you pursue. I'm going to end off now with encouraging resilience. And there's 4 legs to that chair. Solid, authentic content. And I've listened to some of the videos, I've listened to some of the podcasts. I just think your content is fantastic. It's just so humane and it doesn't sound like anything commercial. It's got that little bit of special. So your content is great. Customization is something that you need to work on. I mentioned that your app and your website can help you do that. Collaboration is really, really important. And this is where the hardest work, I think, is going to come for your organization. I mentioned Facebook launching a competitor radio station. That's just an example. Amazon, anyone can do it. Spotify, they can just do it in a few weeks, and they can pretty much bring over your available listenership. Your content needs to be available on your app and on your website, but you also need to be prepared to collaborate. Everything to do with technology in the future is about collaboration. Open source technology. And you need to be prepared to have your content used on other platforms. And you need to actively collaborate with other organizations. That is imperative for your future. And that's why you need somebody at that boardroom table who's very good at collaborations. Engagement. Solid, authentic content, customization, collaborations, and engagement. I've got a secret tip for you here. Prepare your content not only for your listeners, but also for Google. In the future, people will be doing their searches via voice search. And there are tricks of the trade which you can use right now to give your content an advantage over search engines. Focus on things like long tail search phrases, lots and lots of things you can do.
What's a long tail
It's exactly like it's a phrase which is long. So if I was to give a factual explanation of it, on an HTML website you will have your background code, your HTML, but there's certain fields of information like page title. So if you go to Google now, and you Google any subject, Google will give you paid adverts, and then it will give you naturally listed adverts, which you focus on with search engine optimization. And there's three things that you can manipulate immediately, and that's the page title. Always need to make that more interesting. Your page description, which Google often displays, you can almost force Google to display that. Otherwise, Google goes into your page and looks for something it thinks is relevant. And then the final thing, to answer your question, is your meta tags. And right now, people focus on 2 or 3 words. But if you are asking a Google device a question, you're using an entire sentence. And you can start programming your websites and apps and your content for long tail search phrases. Voice search is the way it's going to go in the future, and I'm pretty certain that there is no organization like yours which is currently focusing on the long tail search phrases. Little tricks, so that was my tip. So those are the pros and the cons for your organization, the trends and influences underway and on their way, and I want to just quickly round off and shamelessly plug my book. And this book, I'm not actually punting the book, but there is a specific chapter in here which I wrote while I finished writing while I was in Zimbabwe with Chantel. We were presenting to a group of engineers there, wondering where their field was going to be in the future. This book itself covers a number of things: climate change, e-sports, e-security, digital copyright infringements. It's a chapter about China, a chapter about Rwanda, a chapter about Zimbabwe, automation, space travel. I was at NASA earlier this year. It was a wonderful experience. And what else is natural disasters, COVID pandemics, and man-made and natural disasters. And we've got many of them now. But the chapter I want to quickly shoot through is called Back to the Future Present. And there's a few titles in this chapter, and I want to quickly go through them, and then I will try to just highlight those that I think are specific to your organization. Automation, job losses because of robots and machines. It's a major concern for our labor market. The gig economy. The way people used to get jobs in the future is not going to be the same way. In the past, won't be the same in the future. Climate change, absolutely massive. I was on Mauritius Island doing some research there on climate change and the effects on island states, and as I got there, I issued a cyclone warning, so it was a first-hand experience. So I got stuck in the island. Urbanization, mass migration, the ethical Yuri, that's really applies to you because everyone's moving to Mossel Bay now. Yes. So people are moving to cities where lifestyle and quality of lifestyle are better. So people are leaving Johannesburg and moving to Mossel Bay. But that's happening all over the world. It's also related to climate change. There are island states losing their entire homes at the moment. We're becoming refugees. The ethical shopper and ethical business. I did a post yesterday on my social media about South Africa now imposing fines on corporates who don't declare their businesses' buildings energy consumption. And these sort of regulations are going to happen all over the world. Future infrastructure, the e-world, e-sports, e-shopping, and the metaverse. Shift from fossil fuels to renewables, infrastructure and financing future things. Banks don't know how to finance, and insurance companies don't know how to insure future things. If you try to build an eco-home, very difficult to do. The singularity, I love talking about that. Does anyone know what the singularity is? It's happening soon. End of this decade, it is the moment in time where computing power is greater than all of man's thinking power. So it's very, very exciting. Space travel, space tourism, space farming, and space law. Technology in our body and also in the bodies of our animals. I believe in the future people will be picking up your organization's shows through a device in their body. Maybe it sounds a little bit gross, but it's going to happen. medicine and human care, natural and man-made disasters, and we know we've got our pick at the moment, shuffling and stumbling superpowers, the shift away from government reliance. That's something that's happening in South Africa because our government has failed us and corporates and communities are standing up and sorting out their own water and power. Commodities and supply pressures, the future of Africa. Africa is the continent with the most untapped potential, and I think it's going to play a huge part in the global scale. Governments needing to find new sources of income, new regulations related to climate change, e-economy, e-trade and blockchain systems, the universal basic income subsidy or grant. This is where people normally laugh at me and I lose them. Flying transport, and the shift back to rail. I promise you there are countries where you can buy a flying car at the moment. Whether you can fly it is entirely different discussion. Freedom of e-rights, e-communication, and e-expressions, and that's something the radio station is going to have a huge part in. E-safety and e-behavior, especially for children. Children are especially at risk with digital communications. E-crimes and e-warfare. Russia and Ukraine were fighting one another online way before they started fighting physically. So those are all the influences at the moment in that one chapter. And I'm now happy to answer any questions, but how's my time? Has anybody been timing me? No one's been timing me. What is the time? 3:15. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Why it is every time so that it's 3 years and something happened? Because 20 years ago we said that the newspaper is history and radio is has been history for almost decades, but it's not, and we still have newspapers. And why it's 3 years again and again and again?
Are you talking about fear-mongering and people
Yes,
saying,
because
you
you
know,
are saying,
technology-
because you are saying, actually you said also that 3 to 5 years, and we need to do something before, and in 3 years or something.
So there's the 3-year period which I want you to dip your toe in the water and start doing some things digital, but don't make the change too quickly.
Yes.
And then between 5 and 10 years, you need to be prepared to start doing adding video and using other platforms. In between 10 and 20 years, depending on which country we're in, I believe analog will pretty much be obsolete. And I don't think that that is an unreasonable period of time or something that should scare you. I think it's inevitable. The signs are there. But perhaps you've been burnt like with Bitcoin. Everyone's like, go buy Bitcoin or go invest in the metaverse. Everyone gets so excited about technology. Technology only works when there is a need for it. And there's a need for radio. So I have full confidence that it's going to take the next step and it's going to jump into the future. And other than the need, we've got technology which also brings down the costs and it increases access. I can't think of a reason that we wouldn't migrate to e-radio. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I'm not scared about it, but I don't work in your organization. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for you to reach even more people and in different ways. Engage, do more, get wonderful testimonials. Did I answer your question at all? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What a relief. Any other questions?
No, Matt, I
Well,
have a question.
Yeah.
We're going to say the same thing, so I'll leave it to you, Frank.
Thank you, Victor. I think Victor deserves an award. And this kind of app is going to be built. It's important that you build your one soon, and before a competitor could possibly do it. And if you can do it for less, that's great. Funding the app is another problem. Maintenance of the app is another problem. But there are organizations which are already doing it. You just need to study them and customize it for your own organization. Right. Okay. I am hanging around afterwards. I wanted to end off by saying Amen. It's the only talk I can do. Thank you very much.